new elite. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, running through bowl history. And our goal here is to bring you the bowl history of all 80 bowl participants. I don't know if I'm going to get this done, but just to make sure, I'm going to start with the elite. And we're going to start with all the big teams in the major bowl matchups. And let's start with the college football playoffs and the Clemson Tigers. Certainly not the bowl history of the likes of Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, USC, Notre Dame. But most of the important games have been played in the last 5 years. What a job Dabo Swinney has done, of course, in stabilizing this program at the top of college football, arguably the second best program in college football. I think that's pretty well-founded. All right, let's go back into the annals before we reach 2018 here. Clemson is 22-20 all-time in bowl games, going all the way back to 1940 and the Cotton Bowl, as they played the Cotton Bowl this year against Notre Dame. They beat Boston College in that first bowl game in Clemson history 6-3 in front of 20,000 at the Cotton Bowl. It was a 12-11 matchup in the national rankings. So Clemson gets off to a great start in bowl history. All right, Frank Howard then took over for 30 seasons at Clemson. He was there for 30 seasons. He went to 6 bowl games. So keep in mind that not everybody went to bowl games at that point. You had to be really good to get to the one of 8 bowl games or 10, and then it ramped up from there. But Frank Howard, his stay went up until 1970. At Clemson, he went 3-3. His 3 wins were in the Gator, Orange, and Bluebonnet Bowls. All right, then Danny Ford took over, took the team to 8 bowl games, and, of course, went 6-2. And, of course, the first one is the most memorable one for anyone that's not a Clemson fan. So there's one that's mega significant, and then there's one that's significant for a number of reasons. The video and the look of Woody Hayes punching linebacker Charlie Bauman as he came off the field. Ohio State driving, trying to go for the game-winning field goal, trailed 17-15 with just seconds left in the game. Driving down the field in Clemson territory, probably only needed one more completion to win the game to set up the game-winning field goal. Art Schlechter throws the interception to Charlie Bauman. He runs to the sideline. Woody Hayes, in anger, lifts his helmet and at least attempts to punch him in the throat. Gave it his best. And it's one of the iconic, unfortunate moments, but iconic moments in football history because of the greatness of Woody Hayes, and that being his final moment on the field. But for Clemson, it was a bowl win against a major power, Ohio State, and the first of 6 wins for Danny Ford in 8 bowl games. All right. He also had wins against Stanford, Penn State, Oklahoma, West Virginia. But, of course, the 1982 Orange Bowl, Clemson, not a power, not a major power, came out of nowhere, won all its games to set up a matchup with Big 8 champion Nebraska. Homer Jordan, Perry Tuttle, and the boys got it done to win Clemson's first national championship, and many thought this would be the only one for the 1981 season over Nebraska at the Orange Bowl, 22-15. All right. Under Tommy West and Tommy Bowden, Clemson had 5 straight losing bowl appearances. They went 2-5 against the SEC during the span of West and Bowden. I actually was in the press box for the 1999 Peach Bowl effort against Mississippi State. The Bulldogs won it 17-7. That was a pretty good Mississippi State team. They finished 10-2 in the SEC that year. Clemson came in at 6-5, so that dropped them to 6-6. And then the last non-Dabo Swinney bowl game for Clemson was the 2007 Chick-fil-A Bowl in the same stadium, but they renamed the bowl. A loss to Auburn in overtime, 23-20. 2 top 10 defense faced off in this game. This was the ACC's highest-ranked non-BCS bowl game at the time, going to the Chick-fil-A, and Clemson was ranked number 15 in the nation, entering the game at 9-2. They lose this one, though, 23-20 to Auburn, despite C.J. Spiller's 112 yards rushing and a touchdown. Cullen Harper had his issues at quarterback that day, going 14 of 33 for just 104 yards. Enter the Dabo Swinney era. And what an upsurge in Clemson football ever since. Now, it didn't start off great. They did lose 3 of their first 4 bowl games, even to the likes of, imagine this, in 2018, losing a bowl game to South Florida at the Car Care Bowl. And then probably the game that, though embarrassing, turned the program around for the better was the 70-33 embarrassment against Geno Smith and company at the Orange Bowl. So Clemson finally wins an ACC championship. It's first in, what was it, like 22 years? They get to the Orange Bowl. It's a pick'em game, from what I remember, against West Virginia, and they get annihilated, torched. The defense looked, despite having athletes on defense, it wasn't that, though they lacked speed, it wasn't like West Virginia had too much speed, just poor assignments, blown coverages, poor scheme, couldn't tackle, didn't want to tackle. An embarrassment, 70-33. West Virginia could have scored more than 70. They pretty much put it on cruise control in the fourth quarter. That ushered in Brent Venables from Oklahoma's defensive coordinator, and then Clemson took off. The 2012 Chick-fil-A Bowl, Peach Bowl, whatever it was called at that point, proved significant, taking on an LSU team that had just come off a national championship game appearance and was elite. Les Miles on the sideline, and the Tigers, the Clemson Tigers, had to come back, despite dominating statistically, had to come back for the win. And the dramatic pass that I still remember, and Clemson fans will, of course, back me up and remember this one more so than I will. Taj Boyd to DeAndre Hopkins on a 4th and 16 with the game on the line, had to convert or the game would have been over. 4th and 16 on the game-winning march to win it over LSU 25-24 at the Peach Bowl. And this really was a breakthrough for Clemson football. The next one as well, they face another major power, blue blood, Ohio State at the Orange Bowl. So they can't get past Florida State quite yet, but they take on LSU and they knock off the Tigers. Then they take on Ohio State at the Orange Bowl. Matchup of 2 top 10 clubs. Great game. Clemson led 20-9. Buckeyes score 20 straight, lead 29-20. Clemson comes back and wins the game 40-35. Preserved by a Stephen Anthony interception at midfield off Braxton Miller with about a minute to play. Tigers defeat the Buckeyes 40-35 at the Orange Bowl. And then the game against Oklahoma, which was strange in that they ended up playing Oklahoma back-to-back years, but the first one was in the Russell Athletic Bowl 2014 with Deshaun Watson hurt. They had to go with Cole Stout at quarterback, and he ripped up the Sooners for 319 yards in a 40-6 win against Oklahoma. Then the next year they faced Baker Mayfield as a sophomore in the college football playoff at the Orange Bowl and won 40-21. Did not write down the score, but I believe it was 40-21. Close game at half. Tigers blew them out in the second half. Too much defensive line talent for Oklahoma's offensive line, and Baker Mayfield as the Clemson Tigers went to their first national championship game since the Orange Bowl in '82. They took on Alabama. Entertaining game. Alabama certainly the better team in the fourth quarter with the Kenyon Drake returned kickoff for the touchdown. The onside kick by Nick Saban proved costly for Clemson. Deshaun Watson rolled up 478 yards of total offense as Alabama won it 45-40. Then, of course, payback the next year. After beating Ohio State 31-0 in the college football playoff game at the Fiesta Bowl, which, again, was obviously a huge win over a major power, to think Clemson football over this span is beating the likes of LSU and Ohio State and Oklahoma again and Ohio State again. And Alabama, they lost to, but performed admirably. Then they get the rematch against Alabama, and Deshaun Watson etched his legacy forever with a historic performance, passing for 420 yards, bringing Clemson back from 14-0 down, throws the game winner to Hunter Renfrow, and Clemson wins the national title over Alabama 35-31. The two teams rematched, of course, in the college football playoff semifinal last year. and a less than scintillating effort from the Clemson offense in just 188 yards of total offense, 64 on the ground, as Alabama shut them down 24-6. So Clemson, in its 43rd all-time bowl game, will match up for the first time in postseason play against Notre Dame, a team they defeated on a failed two-point conversion in Clemson in 2015. Clemson, Notre Dame, bowl game number 43 for the Clemson Tigers all-time, as we run them all down throughout bowl history and give you a glimpse into the past before we look forward to the future and preview and predict all these games in the 2018-19 postseason, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.